Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too am pleased to have a chance to stand up and speak to C-42, this bill that had such urgency portrayed by the government to us on the committee, the Standing Committee on Transport and Infrastructure, in the fall when we had witnesses in front of the committee with many unanswered questions about this bill. This bill, on the face of it, seems pretty simple. A couple of lines changing in the Aeronautics Act. But really this bill has many more ramifications. And what we've seen from this government is a failure to address the ramifications prior to putting the bill forward. I'm glad that we have managed to insert a review clause in the bill for this legislation, because of course we're entering completely uncharted territory with the release of this information to the United States in the form that we're taking. We are asking Canadians who are not visiting the United States, who are not setting foot on United States soil, to give up their information to a foreign country. That is what we're doing with this bill. So Canadians will give up their information. They will give up more than their information. They will give up the opportunity for the United States to take on more information about them. And how does that work, Mr. Speaker? Well, we heard testimony about the passenger name record. Most of the information that is accessible to Canadians will be transferred, not simply names and passport numbers and dates of birth, but we will be giving the United States the opportunity to examine the full passenger name record. And this is a very serious business because it brings in much more information. And we've, in the media over the past months, we've heard of many examples of individuals whose information has been used in a manner that has left them at difficulty when they try to enter into the United States. So we have a system that's set up that can create much discord among passengers that are traveling over the United States. I'm not going to speak a lot about the human rights issues. I'll leave that to my colleagues who are pretty confident and pleased to take that task on, because I think all Canadians should understand what's happened here. But I'd like to speak to some of the aspects of the bill that we dealt with at committee, trying to mitigate the issues that have surrounded this bill. And you know, my colleague from Edmonton St. Albert talked about this great exemption that was given to the Canadians over the issue of domestic to domestic flights. And it is an exemption that on the face of it seems rather odd. The U.S., being very concerned about their airspace, is allowing an exemption for passengers that are going to go under less security proceedings than they would on an international flight. So a Canadian getting on a flight in Halifax is certainly subject to a lot less scrutiny and procedure under aviation regulations than one flying from Halifax to Puerto Vallarta. Well, why would the U.S. give this exemption? Why would the U.S. give this exemption? Well, I think we heard the answer later on towards Christmas, when it was revealed that this government is planning a perimeter security deal with the United States. Well, if you got a perimeter security deal with the United States where you're passing all information at all times to the United States, it really doesn't matter. The U.S. is quite clever. It doesn't matter to them whether the information is collected domestic to domestic, because with the perimeter security deal you can be sure that the U.S. will get all the information, all the flights in Canada that it requires. And that's something that I think was not very well laid out, but we're still waiting for the results of that. And when we see the Prime Minister heading off down to the United States at the end of this week to speak with Obama, President Obama, about the perimeter security arrangements, I'm sure that some of these aspects will come to light. So, exemption? No, it's part of the U.S. plan to extend the perimeter security arrangement. Now, even with the perimeter security arrangement, the U.S. needs to have the information on international flights flying into Canada. Because, of course, those are flights that that are coming across a common perimeter between the two countries. So, yes, we still need this. If you follow the logic of the United States, they still need this deal in front of them. What is the aspect of perimeter security that we're supposed to deal with here with this particular bill? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Flying into Canada or the U.S. from another country, that information is going to be given to the U.S. government. And what does the U.S. government do with that information? We heard testimony in the committee that the U.S. is not stopped from sharing that information with any other country. That information, when given to the U.S., is its business to deal with it as it sees fit. There is no indication from this government that it put any restrictions on that information. As well, the personal, and we tried to get an amendment here, but it was ruled out of order at the last ditch to try to understand how we could save information on passenger name records so that information that really is no one's business would be kept in Canada. Because most of the servers that contain the information are in the United States, once the United States has the passenger name record, it'll have full access to all that information under its laws. So regardless of what we give them, as long as we give them the passenger name record, all the information is open to them. That was testimony as well that we were given in the House. So there is, once again, this government did nothing to limit the access of the United States to information from Canadians. And my colleagues from the government side talk about the time restriction, 7 days that the U.S. has the information. Well, in 7 days in this modern day of computer age is quite a long time to deal with information. It can do with it as it sees fit. If it destroys the particular information that comes from the Canadian source within the United States, that information will certainly be recorded in other fashions over that time, and within the 7 days could be shared with every other country in the world. So that, once again, because we didn't put restrictions on the sharing of information, this information, once it's let out of the bag, is gone. It's out there. It's available to everyone if the United States chooses to do so. Why did the European Union stand up on this particular issue? Why did the European Union say, we have troubles with these arrangements that are made for overflights? Why did they say that? Did they say that did they say that for no apparent reason? No, because they don't suffer the overflight issue as much as we do. They don't suffer. This is not as big an issue to them because they're not having as many flights. But certainly they have concerns in terms of what their freedom, what their information and personal liberty and privacy is in those countries, and we should have the same in Canada. Mr. Speaker, the amount of issues that were not dealt with this bill, because it was presented in such a simple and naive form in front of this committee, was astounding. This government negotiated for years and years on this issue and couldn't come up with a better bill than this to put in front of us. It's disgraceful. It's disgraceful that this government could put that much effort into it and in their negotiations and come up with a bill that looks like this, with no protection for Canadians, with no limitations on any of the issues that were quite clear and should have been very clear to anyone that was involved in any negotiation with any other country on this type of issue. And they were. So what we see is this government wants this bill. Its plan for a perimeter security arrangement with the United States is going to open up more information than perhaps any Canadian would want to see. We still are a sovereign country. I hope after any more years of this government that we remain as sovereign as we are, and that the rights of Canadians have some redress and that are respected by a government. As such, we're supporting this amendment because we will have a review out of it of this bill. But to support this bill goes against the very nature of our party and our desire to protect the rights of Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.